That's a loaded question.
I think it is. I think it's important for everybody to talk about this stuff.
He started asking me questions about race, about injustice, you know, from the time he was 5 years old.
In my class, this year, we've been talking about American history, and we had to come up with a project that connects major historical events to today's modern society. I've been wondering about how our history of slavery in America relates to the racial difficulties continuing to occur in our country. I'm interested in how you think the current state of racial prejudice is related to the history of slavery in America.
And I think a lot of issues from slavery, it was an ugly part of our history, right? And it's uncomfortable for people to talk about. And in some ways, some people have, because it's uncomfortable, they've sort of pushed it aside. And when you push any issue aside because you're not ready to deal with it, it's going to bubble up, right? So if like you're angry about something and you don't speak up about how you're angry about it, or you know, push it down in your soul, it's eventually going to bubble up and you're going to just blow up one day and be, you know, super angry and aggressive or whatever the case may be.
After slavery, white supremacy and the mentality behind white supremacy did not just get erased, right? People still believe that idea that white people are better than non-white people, and they believe that white people are fundamentally different than non-white people.
I think one of the most obvious ways where we can see, go back to your question about the history of slavery, the contemporary effect of that or legacy of that is in the prison system and the prison industrial complex. There's been a lot of research on it. I mean, a lot of, you know, Michelle Alexander is one, but Angela Davis before her. And I think it's something, because it's the population, because these are populations that are outside of society, so to speak, and hidden away. We really don't think about this entire system and what happens with that system. But there are quite a few ways that you can make the connection between the slavery, well, the capitalism and slavery, and how that has worked to support the foundation of our nation from the very beginning up until the present, and then how some of that is still, a lot of that rather, is still taking place when it comes to the prison system and the justice system.
What do you think about modern police brutality?
The Michael Brown shooting, right? That officer probably did feel in danger, because here he was looking at a black man, a young black man, who, you know, to him, black people are probably really scary, you know, because he has internalized this idea of white supremacy, of like, black people are not as human and they're not predictable and they might be really aggressive, and black men especially are very, very scary people, you know. So that's how he is thinking, even subconsciously, even if he's not saying it to himself out loud, but if it might be behind his assumptions, right? It's behind what he believes, right? But the problem is, then we give these officers guns, and we don't hold them accountable for shooting people, and we don't have very good evidence against them when they do shoot people, you know, and we also tell them, use your judgment. It's okay, use your judgment. If somebody looks dangerous to you, then you got to use your judgment, and we don't give them any training about race. And
why do you think it's important for students in middle school to have these tough conversations, and why you think there's a culture of fear when it comes to talking about race?
The culture of fear stems from the lack of discussion, free-flowing discussion about a lot of issues in our society, but especially as it relates to a race. There's a legacy of not having any real honest discussion about difference, about our history, meaning American history, about the horrible things that we've done to each other, about the horrible things that we've experienced, because it's unpleasant, right? I've noticed that from about the late 80s to 90s on, there was a shift, right? Where you had the politically correct movement, right? So then there were a lot of things that you just didn't talk about, or you had to use euphemistic terms for things that, say, 15 years before you didn't have to use euphemistic terms for. And so I think this move to kind of make everyone comfortable has then created fear when it comes to talking about these issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it is. I think it's important for everybody to talk about this stuff because we all have some responsibility in it. Because, first of all, we all own white supremacy. You know, it's part of all of our lives. It's really our responsibility, all of our responsibility to challenge that, to challenge the benefits that we get, and to challenge the ways in which white privilege and white supremacy hurt non-white people, and especially black people.